Alright, YouTube, you may have seen that the Equation group claims to have hacked the NSA. It's sort of a hacker group. It's being either derided or applauded as having massively sophisticated methods, and this is the new age of cyber warfare and so forth. They're asking for like $500 million worth of bitcoins in order to release the second trove of material they've gotten. People analyzing the first batch that they released appear to agree that it actually is NSA programs, which is pretty funny. It's amusing to think of the NSA, which hacks into cell phones and email and basically, commits treason on a daily basis involving the entire American population, would itself be subjected to having its data stolen. I don't feel sorry for them at the least, and I'll say this. I don't feel that it's an act of war or cyber warfare or that anything wrong happened, and here's why. The NSA as an organization spends most of its time, most of its money, and most of its manpower on doing something that does not keep us safe and violates the U.S. Constitution, quite clearly, as spoken by several federal judges before Congress stepped in, put a Band-Aid on a gaping wound under the orders of the same last federal judge. I think it was the fourth federal judge that ruled on it, saying that their collection of data in its form then was unconstitutional, but stayed the ruling to prevent it from continuing while Congress debated the issue. What Congress ended up doing is simply moving the data storage from government property, government servers, to the private companies responsible for the transference of that information, which is to say they did nothing at all. And Rand Paul abandoned us on this issue, which I was sad about. Ted Cruz had already abandoned ship. Mitch McConnell browbeat Rand Paul, and finally Rand, after filibustering for hours, finally stepped aside so it could go forward, and then afterwards, strangely enough, said, oh yeah, well, this is a victory. It wasn't a victory. The surveillance is still being conducted on a massive scale. The only difference now is that when they issue their rubber-stamped FISA court rulings, which a FISA court in its form shouldn't even be considered a proper court of law able to issue a warrant, especially not a blanket warrant, which itself violates the Fourth Amendment. All it does is it forces them to get that material from an easily accessed non-government server instead of their own servers, so they're just not the ones storing the information to begin with. This solves nothing. So because the NSA has stopped zero terrorist attacks, despite having billions and billions of dollars in assets, despite the fact that the NSA routinely misuses its power and allows its agents to apparently spy on loved ones or relatives or enemies or whatever, despite the fact that it costs too much for too little even if it were effective, despite the fact that it violates the Constitution, they're all claiming, oh, well, great coup, horrible thing that we would be hacked and this material would be released. I don't see it as horrible at all. I don't care. The only concern I would have is that all of that data that's been stored and is accessible through these NSA programs would now become accessible by people from foreign shores. But do you think our government cares if our private data is stolen? They don't care at all. The only thing they worry about at the end of the day is that some hacker group will gain access to the actual financial structure of the United States and wreak havoc and screw around with it so that, trillions of dollars in funny money, which is just a bunch of ones and zeros that happens to be protected on a server somewhere, some PayPal accounts or whatever, bitcoins, whatever it happens to be, will be erased by a group of hackers, thus causing a fiscal Armageddon as people scramble to actually restore those numbers, not knowing exactly necessarily how to do that. Oh, sorry, it's lost forever. They scrambled it real good. I guess your money's just gone, all that money that you had in the bank. That would cause Armageddon. Now, there's a simple solution for this, of course, on the end as far as money is concerned. Why don't you stop storing it as data? Why don't you get rid of the concept of credit and debit and accounts run through computers, as opposed to things done on paper, manually, is not a great idea. It's like your electrical grid. You should have the capability to operate a checkout line without electricity. It's simple. They were doing it hundreds of years ago. You have a backup system in place that doesn't rely upon these things. It doesn't need your server to be running properly in order for your store to stay open, in order for your bank to store money or whatever. Problem solved. Now, these hackers would largely no longer bother to target such systems because the government would just laugh it off. As far as the NSA is concerned, I don't give a fuck about what happens to the NSA. If they get hacked, too bad. It just shows that they're inept. But then again, I didn't need any proof that they were inept in the first place. As soon as Snowden began leaking information, and the head of the NSA got contradicted by continuous leaks for the course of several months, I knew that there was corruption there, and it was also fairly clear that there was ineptitude here. If a hacker collective managed to grab all of their programs, and now wants payment to release the second, bigger, better batch, apparently, which I don't think they'll get the money, sadly for them. If they're able to get a hold of this material, this means two things. First, the NSA is incapable of storing things just like Hillary Clinton was incapable of storing things, or the State Department, or anybody else in government, really, without it getting fucked up somehow by some foreign group. This is just apparently a group of black hat hackers. They're not even like a state actor or something. Kaspersky's antivirus sort of Russian front was monitoring them, so, oh, you know, they're real sophisticated. Well, if they're sophisticated, don't you think that the hackers fielded by, like, the Chinese or something are even more sophisticated and can do even more damage? They probably had access to the NSA system for years. The NSA wouldn't necessarily even know. Maybe they covered all their footsteps and they've got all of our information, every text message and email, and they're just going to dump it all in order to ruin everybody's lives so that the whole nation falls into chaos as everyone realizes, oh, he's cheating on her, she's cheating on him, he embezzled 50 grand, this dude smokes crack when he gets home, he's like the janitor at the White House or something. That sort of thing could happen. We saw it happen with the Ashley Madison leaks and so forth. And I think you'd find that most people in the United States would have some sort of dirt that would be dug up in such a situation. It would cause a lot of crime, it would cause a lot of divorces, it would cause a lot of violence, it would cause a lot of economic mayhem potentially. It would also cause a lot of criminal prosecutions if that were to be made publicly available. But I think the big concern, other than that, is that if these are indeed NSA programs that can now be literally accessed by anybody who happens to know how to properly install these things and potentially replicate them or whatever, that every foreign state in the world can now just use the NSA systems. Oh, sorry, the NSA has to take them all down, rebuild them in a new form, and then redeploy them, which will take them quite some time. That's the second main problem. The third problem is, of course, most of these programs explicitly violate the Fourth Amendment and shouldn't even exist to begin with. The problem with domestic surveillance and big data gathering is that we the people have to rely upon the concept that has been proven wrong year after year forever, that the government is capable of properly storing our digital information, which includes every text, every email, every phone call, all the metadata, everything under the sun, all the images we sent, all the videos we made. We have to trust them to be able to store this and protect it in such storage, not even looking at the constitutional argument, but to protect it from other actors from potentially accessing it. Well, I don't trust them to do that. I also don't trust the companies that they now entrust to do the same thing, because they're just as hackable. If the NSA can be compromised by a group of black hat hackers, then how much more will they be able to compromise presumably less well-protected systems at some telecom company? No, I think it would be considerably less. Now, I might be wrong here. Maybe the NSA is just really, really inept, and it was just really, really easy to access those systems. Oh, sorry, if they've got all those programs, who's to say they can't access that stuff anyway? Therein lies the problem. And if these groups realize that they can access these systems, and they can cover their tracks in doing so, they probably already accessed as much of that information as possible, got it all, stored it somewhere as insurance. Which means, yeah, your text messages and stuff are probably floating around on Russian servers too, and there's not a damn thing Uncle Sam can do about it, other than to shut these programs down. They're not doing any good, they cost too much, they're woefully ineffective, they're poorly protected. Why bother? Domestic surveillance doesn't serve a purpose. It never did. It doesn't catch any terrorists. Local law enforcement, private individuals, and even like fucking private security guards like in Garland, they're the ones dealing with the problem. Routine, some beat cop, a dude who just happens to be like NRA member mode. Those are the people that are stopping terrorists. The TSA doesn't stop them. They can't even find a bomb-shaped passage that they try to pass through as part of some journalistic sting investigation at MSNBC or something half the time. So what's the purpose of the NSA, the TSA, the FBI's knockoff NSA programs that they're trying to institute, that they're trying to pass through and say, oh, well, we want that power too? Because it's so hard to just ask the NSA for whatever info we need. Or any of these other groups. What good is it serving? We're paying a huge amount of money and we're not getting anything in return other than screwed and having our data compromised. It's bad enough. Plenty of individuals don't properly protect their data. Plenty of individuals get a lot of viruses. They use like PC-matic and stuff. They just don't know anything about computers other than you know, how to type on a Word file or something, or how to watch cat videos on YouTube. Plenty of people get their data compromised already because of their own ineptitude. And plenty of business data already gets compromised, screwing people in the process. We've seen this at banks. We've seen this at corporations before. Why then do we want another layer of vulnerability, which is really what it is, which is the government is going to redundantly store everything you're already storing, and provide another attack point that potentially gets infiltrated by people who clearly are able to hack a government bureau with, you know, apparently relatively little problem. Apparently this stuff dates back to 2013. It dates back to before Snowden's own revelations. They had already hacked this material back then and were just sitting on it for several years. Now, ask yourself why they would do that. I think they're releasing it now just to cause more chaos and mayhem. Well, I don't even care. We've already seen the DNC's been hacked, the DCCC's been hacked, the Clinton campaign's been hacked, George Soros Foundation was hacked, the State Department was hacked. Everything's been hacked. Why are we storing all this bullcrap on computer systems to begin with? If the government wants to conduct surveillance on someone, get an honest-to-goodness warrant and do it on paper, the old-fashioned way with the G-men. It's going to be more effective anyway. Just shadow them around. Send a minivan to go spy on them or something. If you have probable cause and you can convince a public court, a real court of law, that you do have probable cause, then by all means, under the Constitution, yeah, the government has that power. But using blanket warrants, rubber stamped by a FISA court, and then improperly storing every bit of data under the sun seems like a bad idea to me. So I'm not surprised they got hacked. I'm not surprised that it happened apparently several years ago. I'm not surprised that now probably every fucking hostile state on earth has access to these programs. And I'll point out one thing in passing. It doesn't really have to do with this specific hack by the Equation Group. Does anybody find it strange that the formerly pacifistic Democratic Party, that under the late Bush years into the sort of the 2008 election, they're like, oh, no more war, no blood for oil. And now all of a sudden they seem to want to start the Cold War anew with Russia, as well as bomb Syria and Libya and everything else under the sun? The Democrats have become the pro-war party, is what I'm saying. They've also become the corporate party. The Republicans have turned into the populist workers' party. It's very, very funny to see. Another reason Hillary, I believe, will lose. That's about all. Peace out.